All right, everyone.
Hey,
We're back with another episode of TezTalks Radio. I'm Marissa True, and of course, you all know my co-host Stu Elms. Hey, Stu. Oh, nonverbal hello today. Okay. So this week we're talking about dogs, and not just any dogs. We're talking digital dogs or NFT dogs, if you will. And we are chatting to the co-founder and CEO of Dogami, the latest play-to-earn game that will be launched on none other than Tezos. So welcome, Max Stockel.
yes,
How are
thank
you
you.
this morning?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's a very early start for you, so we really
Yeah,
appreciate that you took the time to set your alarm slightly earlier for us. We will start off this chat right at the beginning with the birth of the idea for Dogami. So, what inspired its creation? How did you come up with this idea?
sure. So, um, we are four co-founders. One is non-executive, but I think we all super excited about the opportunities that NFTs have to offer. And I think for us, it was quite clear that one of the biggest driver for NFT adoption is going to be in gaming. And so, Bidal from Equisave, who is our CTO, he was talking to a guy in Paris who is a serial entrepreneur and has like a substantial media outlet for pets and dogs. So this guy has the biggest media outlet in Europe with like 50 million unique users per month. And so they were discussing So Rare, which is like the football collectible game that's super successful currently. I think they are now valued at over 1 billion. And and they were like, hold up, there could be an opportunity at the intersection of dogs, NFTs, and Tamagotchi. And that really was the genesis of the Dogami. And I think we've been working now on it since May, roughly, full time. Right now, we are 15 people working on it, excluding freelancers. And we are super excited about what's about to happen with the project.
What stage are you at in terms of the game's development at this stage?
So we now have a very good high level idea of what the game loop is going to look like. So the high level game loop for the player. So the way it's going to work is, what as a player, you have a puppy in the very beginning, you raise it, then once you hit a certain level, you can specialize it, and then you can start breeding with it. Once again, you've unlocked the feature. And so now we are following a phased approach. So we'll release the first phase of the game, that is the nurturing phase, in Q1 next year. And as we go, we'll introduce new features. So that being said, we are now finalizing the game design documentation for this first phase, and we're already coding the smart contracts for the game. And actually, I think we have a running prototype already for that.
Okay.
That
But
means we
the
also have like the smart contracts for the NFTs, but also for our token.
and the NFT drop will happen well in advance of next year's launch, right?
Should also happen Q1 next year, and we will launch the token before that. So we don't want to have too much lag between the NFT launch and the game launch, because we want to give it as much utility as possible early on. Otherwise, we fear that we get some backlash from the community if we wait too long.
So speaking of utility, um, purchasing like an NFT Dogami, it's quite a different proposition than what you might call a traditional NFT, right? It has a specific kind of utility within the context of the game. The closest comparison I can kind of think of would be something like Magic cards, where you have. Are you familiar with Magic?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not dating myself here. Where you have cards that, because of their powerful utility within the game of Magic, they have gained an enormous amount of value over time. Do you see a future where NFTs with in-game utility like this could be sought after the way those kind of Magic cards are?
Oh, definitely. First of all, because they're like rare and cool, And second of all, because as you said, they have in-game utility. However, for us though, we don't want to give too much power to scarce NFTs in the game, because otherwise we have a balancing issue. And also people don't appreciate that. If like gamers have the feeling that people can buy their way up to the top of the game. And so we want to avoid that. That being said, more scarce NFTs in our case will have a different benefit than like lower grade NFTs. So you have so you also want to differentiate them on the utility. And
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's,
sorry.
I was just going to say, I guess it's about striking the balance between creating that sense of value, but also encouraging people to participate without setting a price point too high through market hype, as it were.
Definitely, yeah. And I think when you look at Axie Infinity, it's not really accessible right now. It costs what, $500 to participate, which is really too much for most people, unless you have like a scholarship, of course. But that's also something that we see as a huge pain point in current play to earn gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I think Axie Infinity is sort of it's been the poster child for the play to earn movement, as it were, in terms of being able to monetize assets in game. But one critical question that we keep facing again and again is how much steam that you think there is that's actually left in this trend, and what it's going to take to keep this momentum up before people kind of ignore the potential of this technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I think, first of all, the value proposition that NFTs and blockchain offer in gaming are amazing. So I used to be a big gamer myself. So I think I played 20,000 hours in my teens. So really a lot. And I played a lot of Counter-Strike Source and Call of Duty, but also Guild Wars. And when you roam a dungeon for 6 hours on a Saturday afternoon, and then you get to that loot box and you get that sword, you feel really proud. And first of all, this item has value, but second of all, you can also, sell it to other people sometimes. And there's a huge gray market in gaming, which is untapped by publishers, first of all. And second of all, also offers the potential for a lot of fraud. And I think with NFTs and blockchain, you can establish more official secondary marketplaces, which is cool. And then you can also enable gamers to earn money, obviously. And then you can also enable gamers to build some legacy. So for example, I was reflecting from that time, from my teens, I didn't take anything with me. I had a good time and I had a good time with my friends on TeamSpeak and whatsoever, but nothing's remaining, so to say. And that's a bit of a pain because those are still good memories. And that's where I think that NFTs and blockchain have a big value proposition. And then also when you look at where play to earn market is in terms of size compared to the traditional gaming market, you get a feeling of how big it can still be. So I estimate that the play to earn market has in 2021 generates like 1.5 to 3 billion USD, basically from spending that goes from gamers to publishers. And when you compare that with the like for like metric for the global gaming market, which is 175 billion USD, you see that there, is a lot of room. So currently we're at like 1% of the total gaming market with play to earn. So yes, I think there's a lot of steam for that. However, I think the biggest impediments for play to earn market right now are threefold. So I think the gaming experience right now is pretty bad for most games. Axie, for example, is not really exciting. But then the user experience is, mediocre or bad, because you have to log on to a lot of different things and onboarding clients is difficult. And then also it's quite inaccessible because it's expensive, as I said. And once those impediments have been overcome, I think this is going to be the inflection point where this thing really, takes off.
Right. So I think, I think a large part of it is that user experience, because it is very much a learning curve. If you're going to venture into any aspect of the blockchain realm, it's not as straightforward as logging on via a website. You have to set up your wallet, you have to fund it. There's so many more steps, or invisible steps, that get in people's way. But then on the more institutional side, like, how do you actually see this blockchain gaming industry evolve over time? You've already mentioned that, we're about like 1% of its overall potential, but as traditional gaming enterprises are getting more involved in the investment space, I mean, we saw Ubisoft uh, contribute to the latest investment round for Animoca Brands, which recently raised 65 million US dollars. There's clearly kind of traditional gaming appetite for this new realm. So how do you see this playing out? How do you see traditional game developers morphing or evolving for this new kind of gaming?
I think those game publishers have it on the radar. So, as you said, they're looking into investments, they're looking into supporting younger startups as well, especially in the case of Ubisoft. But I also know that some of these publishers, I know it because we talked to them, have talked about or have looked into play to earn gaming since 3 years or so, but they've never really done anything because they always discovered some red flags. And one of these red flags could, for example, be the association with betting, which usually play to earn is not betting, but it still can be seen like that. And I think it takes a lot of education of people to not have that, characteristic, or to not be associated with that. So I do think that NFTs and blockchain are going to be part of games in one shape or the other. I'm not sure though whether play to earn games is going to be part of the traditional gaming mix for every publisher. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a lot of the emphasis on play to earn gaming has sort of it's sort of narrowed people's perspectives as to the potential of the space, because now everyone sees every blockchain based game as a potential play to earn game, without understanding that there's obviously distinctions between different game formats, and not everything is going to be, I guess, a money making opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one point that I mentioned that I forget before is the interoperability aspect. I mean, it would be amazing if you could take your NFT items from one game to the other, right? And that's also something that's going to be enabled by NFTs. And that's something that traditional game publishers will use, I think.
So with your launch still kind of off in the distance to a certain extent, um, who's currently backing the development of Dogami?
Yeah, so we're able to convince quite a few influential investors from the very beginning. So our founding partners are Blockchain Founders Fund, who are one of the biggest investors in Splinterlands. Then we also have Draper Gordon Hall, which I think are no strangers to the Tezos community. Then we also have the co-founders of Sandbox, who are on our cap table from the very beginning. And ever since, we've been able to convince a myriad of other business angels and funds in the crypto world, but also in the gaming world, to support us. And so by the end of the year, we'll have collected 5 million euros to build the project, which is quite substantial. And there's also great news lined up. Unfortunately, I can't talk about it. But it's going to be a big game publisher and the biggest player in the NFT space who will also support us. So
Very cool. So
absolutely.
so all of these investors are sort of banking on the potential of the gaming ecosystem on the blockchain. As far as the gaming ecosystem on Tezos is still kind of in its infancy, and obviously, sort of the next thing that's going to need to happen for these things to take off, as you said, is to attract people to them, right? What role do you see Dogami playing in marketing Tezos as an attractive space for gamers?
Yeah, obviously we will have to spend quite a lot to acquire people on the platform, to bring them to sign up for a Tezos wallet, to also buy Tezos and then exchange them for Doga and then buy a dog. So in the beginning, we want to tap highly into the existing Tezos user base, which is, as you know, quite engaged. And then, as I said, we will have to acquire customers ourselves quite substantially. And yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a big contribution to the ecosystem because you onboard a lot of customers who then can also jump from one Tezos application to the other. So yeah, good times.
Is there a big sort of marketing push in the works as part of the process of getting this thing launched?
Absolutely. So there's going to be a mix of influencers who are part of our cap table. Then there's going to be growth hacking stunts, and then there's going to be the more traditional, media spending, like PR releases, etc., to announce the launch of Dogami.
One question I have is that clearly, you're tapping into, like, by building on Tezos, you're tapping into a very enthusiastic user base, as you already remarked. But what were the other qualities that you factored in when actually selecting a blockchain to develop your game on? Like, what was it that made this the more appealing choice above others?
Sure. So, frankly, we had a lot of discussions whether we should go for Tezos or not. Eventually, though, we decided for it because Bilal, co-founder who has done Accusave, as I said, is super entrenched in the Tezos community. And he and his team, they know the tech, so they can build super quickly on it. So, and we didn't want to lose time because we think speed matters in that space to get mind share of people and to also grab market share. And given the scalability of the blockchain, but also the ease of use, because transactions are quite quick and these sorts of things, we decided to go for it eventually. And also, I have to say that energy efficiency is quite a good selling point. So recently discussing a partnership with a very known consumer brand in Asia, let's put it that way. And they were actually asking how energy efficient our blockchain is. And then, we pulled out some documents from the community. And it's like, yeah, that's what it looks like. It's a few million times more energy efficient than a common traditional proof of work blockchain. And so that helps, I think. And
Yeah.
we steadfast that it was the right decision to do it.
Yeah, I think it's about also understanding, I guess, the public perception of a blockchain and whether, given the more conscious consumers, as it were, where they'd be most comfortable playing in a way. So a lot of the conversation around blockchain gaming has sort of pegged itself to NFTs, but of course, just having an NFT component to your game isn't the thing that makes it inherently successful. So as as you are developing this game, I wanted to ask what sort of characteristics you think blockchain based games will need to have to win in this space, to build this traction amongst a gamer community.
Sure. So I think in the beginning, it's important to have a strong brand to acquire customers, but also to remove all of the obstacles on the way. So to really offer a good user experience. For example, by using ramp networks so that people who don't have a wallet yet can sign on to Dogami directly. Then I think the second point to engage people is going to be good gameplay. That's going to be critical, I think. And when you talk to VCs, there's so many play to earn projects coming. Most of them is not good, apparently, from what you hear, but still, it's competition. And so they're going to lure people over to their platforms. And also, I don't think that you can really differentiate yourself on the play to earn rewards in the beginning, because that's just then a war on money. So I think that it's going to be a bit tricky. And so gameplay is critical. And then the third pillar is then to retain the customers by obviously building a strong community, to giving people a lot of reasons to stay, and so that it remains an exciting experience in which they want to engage in. So what we want to do is Dogami should ideally almost become this lifestyle, right? Where you hang out with your friends, you hang out in the Petaverse, you you make friends there, you make a living even maybe, and that's the vision for the project.
Okay. And so, I mean, when we talk about like creating this sort of lifestyle component to the game and this notion of the petaverse, and obviously, I mean, I think that's like a parallel buzzword to the metaverse in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
I mean, is Dogami basically just like the first piece in what you consider to be a much bigger gaming ecosystem with a lot of other animal breeding sorts of like, so people will be able to pick the animals they like and then cultivate those instead? So if you're not a dog person, there'll be a cat army or something similar.
Obviously, we do have this on the roadmap. However, we want to focus on Dogami first. But the way the Petaverse is laid out, it's supposed to be this open world where people can, hang out with the avatars, which are dogs, and then they can go after the business, can play games, can have experiences. I mean, we're even thinking of doing concerts, as you would see it in Fortnite, for example, with Travis Scott, or doing, yeah, fashion shows. I don't know. So there's so many opportunities, and I think that's also something that really excites us about the project, because it's endless, and you really have to just prioritize on what you do first.
Do you think
Okay.
that there's a big appetite for this type of thing in this time and place right now, or is that something that is going to have to be sort of built and generated through marketing and attracting people and word of mouth?
I think there is some appetite. I think there's a big space at the intersection of mobile gaming and NFTs, and then dog lovers, for example. So I think this is going to be quite easy to sell. But yeah, it's going to take some education for sure, especially on play to earn games and how it works with blockchain and stuff. And that's why I said in the beginning, there's going to be a lot of blockchain projects incoming. So this VC I've talked to, he has looked at 220 projects. I think they ended up investing in 30 or so. But anyway, if all of these start advertising and educating people on play to earn, it's actually a huge. It's good for the community. Let's put it that way, and it's going to help us also build our customer base.
You mentioned Axie Infinity a bit earlier. How does Dogami differentiate itself from a project like that?
I think the first element is that we are not a battling game. So Axie is a battling game, and more like a card battling game anyway. So I wouldn't see it as a direct competitor in that sense. Second of all, I think we want to have a better brand. And as I said, we want to build this lifestyle around Dogami. And then the third aspect for me, and that's high, high on my personal agenda, is to offer better customer experience. So as we're in Tezos, we're in layer one. We're not on Ronin, for example, as Ronin like Axie. So that's going to help to improve the customer experience and the user experience. And also, I think Axie in itself is quite niche, right? So the way the monsters look and everything, I don't think they have a potential to. I mean, probably they could, but to do like a Netflix show out of Axie. Whereas for Dogami, we have like a strong branding team. We have a one of the best typographers and branders in the world, who's called Neville Brody. He, for example, has done prints for Supreme, has led the rebranding of Dior. So he's really good in shaping the brand narrative. And then also we have a Marvel comics writer who has done, for example, 4, and he helps us build the narrative for the game, which is going to unfold over the next 2 to 3 years. So then we have enough of depth to nurture the story of Dogami. Like, where did it come from? why do they bond with humans? What are the different characters in this universe that really should help us differentiate from the rest of the pack and to build a strong brand?
Okay,
Will
so
the
oh, go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead, Stu.
okay. Will the narrative that you're describing, would that be a unique narrative for each user, or would that be a larger narrative in which everybody participates?
So there's going to be the backstory, that's a global story, and then basically every player has to build their own story. That's how it's laid out, at least for now. By participating in different mini games or pursuing different career tracks, so they can build their own story
For sure.
around Dogami.
So, in terms of how elaborate the narrative that you're building around this game is, and I mean, if you're forecasting a 2 to 3 year sort of storyline, so that there's all these layers and different dimensions to it, and you briefly mentioned, you couldn't convert Axie into like a cartoon TV show sort of thing. Is that something that you actually see in the pipeline for Dogami after the game is released and you see the initial market reception? Is that where you see it venturing off? You want to take it beyond the gaming realm into more content driven businesses?
Definitely. So that was obviously just an example, and we want to focus on one problem at a time.
Sure.
But personally, my North Star would be to have a Dogami Netflix show for sure. It would be amazing. And that being said, like, we also push partnerships a lot. So we want to have 4 to 5 partnerships a year. We're already filling the pipeline with lifestyle brands, fashion brands, musicians, maybe even consumer brands, so that we bring the cultural references from outside the metaverse into the Petaverse, and which is mutually beneficial. And yeah, so it's not just a play to earn game, it's more of an experience and a lifestyle, as I said.
So, and on that level, in terms of, say, for example, you mentioned also earlier being able to host concerts within the Petaverse. Can you tell us a bit more about who your target audience for this game is? Is it younger users or is it intergenerational? Who is the image in your mind of what your customer looks like?
So we have a few personas there, but obviously we targeting gamers, more like arcade gamers and casual gamers who have some interest for crypto and dogs. But that being said, though, that's the tricky bit about, because in the beginning you have to cater to NFT collectors and crypto enthusiasts, and then as you go, you move on to crypto gamers, and then you want to open up to a wider audience that would be the more traditional gamers. So then, for the first bit, your NFTs have to look amazing. You have to offer also good rewards for those people, and then for the second chunk you have to offer a good gaming experience, but also good play to earn rewards, and then for the third chunk, probably user experience is going to be critical. So yeah, it's basically, in the beginning we focus on crypto collectors and crypto enthusiasts, and then we move on to play to earn gamers, if that makes
So
sense.
so it starts niche and then goes a bit more mainstream from there. Because I mean, I think
Absolutely.
back to, when I was 12 years old and I was a voracious Neopets player.
Oh
I
yeah.
played every single game I
Yeah.
had. I had more than I was probably legally allowed to have. And so I think that sort of gaming experience is one that will be the common feeling in a game like this, where you are breeding these pets for a particular purpose. I mean, I don't actually remember if the pets actually did anything beyond just be with you. Um, so, but in that regard, I think it was quite a younger audience, and so I wonder how that's going to play into this blockchain gaming narrative, in terms of you're targeting the NFT enthusiasts at first, but then you could easily also target, very young 10 to 14-year-olds who perhaps don't care at all about what blockchain is or NFT collector potential or anything to do with that. They just want to play a fun game. So how do you cater to them without focusing on the narrative of, this play to earn or all the buzzwords we're currently using to market these games and their popularity?
I think it's going to be difficult to market to the younger demographic. So the demographic should be 18 plus, because I think the legal age limit is going to be that. I'm not sure about that though, I have to say. But yeah, you're right. I don't think that those younger people don't care so much about blockchain, for example. For them, the gaming experience and the experience itself is important. And that's also why we consider ourselves more a gaming project than a blockchain project, if you know what I mean. I'm convinced that in a few years from now, every tech product will have NFTs or blockchain in some shape or form in their backbone, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, if
So it's
there's
basically
if there's
go
one thing
ahead.
if there's one thing we've learned from the inception of the internet, it's that people love cats and dogs, right?
Yeah.
So
True.
obviously it sounds like a very ambitious project.
Yeah.
When you describe not just developing the NFTs and not just the gaming experience itself, but this larger vision of a Petaverse. What can people expect to be their experience when they engage in the Petaverse?
So in the mid-run, we envision having this open world where you can run around with your dog, and then you can participate in different mini or card games, and then also meet people there, as for example, as you see in the sandbox, for example. But in the beginning, the experience is going to be more basic. So we want to enable people to interact with the NFTs, that they can nurture their dog, that they can win the first in-game rewards, and then maybe even farm NFTs from that stage on. We're not quite sure on that yet. But so to manage expectations, the first experience is going to be rather basic. That being said, I think it's still going to be entertaining and engaging. But it's going to take some time to really develop this vision of the Petaverse that we have.
Yeah, and I think it's also just going to take a bit of time for the entire industry to go beyond focusing on, the technical architecture of these games, as you said, it being developed on the blockchain and utilizing NFTs. We want to hit the point where you can't tell whether it's a blockchain based game or not. It's just a game you want to play, and that's as simple as it has to be. But I think in terms of cultivating that user experience and that onboarding and offboarding experience, we've got a ways to go. So it's still very early.
Absolutely.
To wrap up this conversation, because this has been very enlightening, I want to ask you a fairly chunky question. So feel free to take a
Okay.
moment to think about
Sure.
it. And which is just like, if you were to project this gaming universe, say 5 years from now, what does it look like to you? What would be your perfect scenario?
You mean for Dogami or in general for the gaming market?
I would say for the gaming market in general.
I think that, yeah, most games will have NFTs or will support NFTs or blockchain in some shape or form. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to take your NFTs cross-platform, so your in-game items. I also think that there's going to be, we haven't talked about it at all, more opportunities for creators to monetize what they do in the game, or to to build their own sort of experiences, as you see it in Sandbox. And then obviously the whole thing is going to professionalize, and I think there's going to be more people who really play to earn a living, as you see it in Axie Infinity right now. those are my 3 or 4 predictions for the next 5 years.
Well, I mean, I hope that vision does come true, because that all sounds very promising and very idealistic. So, on that note, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for waking up
Thanks for
extra
having
early
me.
to be able to chat to us. Best of luck with all of the development, and we can't wait for it to finally launch.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to check in the next time with you.
Keep
All
us
right,
posted.
awesome.